Welcome back to Slammed. Last time we failed to beat up an old woman. But we're about to get our chance at the big time as we enter Chapter 5, The Brass Ring. Ahem. You're looking a bit on edge. You stop surreptitiously tugging at your blouse and smile sheepishly at Guy Colton. Colton is threading a tiny microphone through the fingers of his huge hands, like a hustler with a playing card. Guy Colton had been promising GWA mid-carder half a decade ago, but it had been a promising GWA mid-carder half a decade ago. But since his early retirement, he'd found his true calling as a wrestling journalist, and now he's the head of a wrestling media empire, or wrestling media third world dictatorship, as he likes to refer to it. The centerpiece of the enterprise is Colton's weekly webcast, Curtain Jerker Says, which has been instrumental in catapulting many guests to stardom. Today, his guest is you. Well, not just you, but all four remaining participants in the GWA's Near Fall Academy reality show. You four semi-finalists are featured guests of a special CJS episode, but since the interviews are all one-on-one, that's of little comfort to you at this moment, especially since you're the first one on the docket. You realize that Colton's waiting for some sort of answer. Well, I mean, we are a heel. Isn't it that that's not really a heel answer. Actually, none of these are really heel answers. Is it that obvious? A bit. Still, Colton trails off. You raise an eyebrow. Colton grins at you. This can't be your first interview. You were a Division I wrestling star after all. Your face must have darkened at the mention of your amateur wrestling history because Colton waves his hands. Don't worry. I know that's not something you like talking about, so I'm not going to go there. Anyway, at this stage in the competition, the GWA Brass wants all of you to look good, so I'm not going into ball-bustin' mode. I'm here to help. He winks at you. Of course, some interviewees are beyond help, and that can be fun too. You swallow hard. Thanks for that. Colton laughs. It's an infectious sound, and you find some of the tension leaving your body. He sets his microphone on the table in front of you, alongside your own microphone. I'm telling you, this is a 3-minute puff piece. A cakewalk. Tell you what, we got some time to kill, so why don't we just talk normally? Informally, off the record, for a few minutes. That usually helps. I'll tell you when we're ready to start recording. Yeah, sure. That's probably fine. It's nice of him to make the offer. You wonder if he does that for everyone. Guy chuckles to himself. I expect that this isn't the way you'd imagine you get your foot in the door of the GWA. A webcast interview, heck, a reality show. What happened to bumping around for 3 years in the developmental league before being brought out to a dark match? Am I right? It was true that there were some who questioned the use of a reality show to find a new member for the main GWA roster. While the contestants were still rigorously trained by the instructors and kept to a schedule more unforgiving, than those in the developmental league, it still meant a short 3 months from start to end instead of the years one usually toiled in developmental, not to mention the idea that fan voting should help determine who lasted until the finals was an idea that many in the old guard found reprehensible. Mob rule, some had said. As for you, do we think the show is a terrible idea? Do we think the show has pros and cons, like the traditional system? Think that the show just means the GWA is keeping up with the changing times? Anything that gets me signed quicker is a good thing. Let's say the show has changing times. Next. Fair enough. Colton leans back in his chair. So, tell me about your first day at the Academy. Off the record, from what we saw in the episode, it was a doozy. Next, 5 weeks ago. Near Fall Academy, Week 6. So, without further ado, let's welcome Shadow the Cunoesse to the Academy. You stood in the foyer of a pristine gym, under the proud logo of Near Fall Academy, next to one of the most popular wrestlers in GWA history, and had to remind yourself this was exactly where you wanted to be. Wasn't an easy task, even with Mr. Awesome, chief trainer of non-fungible asses, applauding with gusto as if to make up for a reaction for the rest of his audience. Of the other two trainers, only Arn, Dragon Drummer Sai, was clapping his hands. The Soul Woman trainer glared at you like she wanted to break every bone in your body. But then, that's the kind of welcome you expected to receive from Tapora Atua. As far as the other contestants, there was some lukewarm applause, but you could tell all of them, except maybe for a vaguely familiar blonde and the huge Filipino leaning against the back wall of the gym, were less than thrilled to see a new challenger arrive. Some of them were more vocal about this than others. This is bullshit. The speaker was All In Roderick Lynn. I guess his nickname is All In because it rhymes with Lynn, so he's All In Lynn. That's not bad. A veteran indie wrestler and something of an internet favorite. He had a physique that mainstream audiences would love and a mustache they'd love to hate. The rumor was that, if not for his bad attitude backstage, he had been signed by the GWA years ago. You'd been on the same card a few times, though you never wrestled him. That was enough to convince you that those rumors were not exaggerated. Oh, thank God. We spill our blood, sweat, and tears here for 2 months, and this Goyle just walks in here midway and takes up a slot? Bullshit. Let's see, we can get in his face, we can cut him down verbally, or we can shrug it off. I think that Cunoesse would get in his face. You drop your bags and stroll over to Lynn, who was conveniently standing at the very front of the pack, his none too subtle way of asserting his alpha dominance, probably. Well, if you thought he were just simply going to roll over, you had another thing coming. Roderick Lynn, right? You cracked your knuckles as you got within arm's reach. Just another worker who thinks he's better than everybody else. You want to keep jawing about it, or do you want to put it to the test? Lynn looked you up and down. Shouldn't you be in a kitchen somewhere, goily, preferably barefoot, and ow! He stumbled forward, cursing. The poor Atua slapped her kendo stick against the palm of her left hand. You scowled at the Samoan. I can fight my own battles. Not here, you don't, Tapora said. She pointed the kendo stick right between your eyes. Our house, our rules. You fight when we say you fight. Now get in the back, hothead. Cool off that hothead and get in line. You gritted your teeth, then realized this wasn't an argument you were going to win. Because at the end of the day, if you wanted that GWA roster spot, Tapora was right. Besides, Lynn was the one that came out of this worse for wear. There would be other days to kick his butt. You retrieved your bags and fell in at the back of the group. For the record, I think you would have totally kicked his ass. You turned to your right to see a young woman in a gray hoodie, smiling up at you with a twinkle in her clear blue eyes and a half smile on moist lips. She was slouching, hands in her pockets. You got the feeling she was trying to make herself look small and unobtrusive. But even with dark rings around her eyes and the complete absence of makeup, she looked absolutely stunning. In fact, there was something about her that looked very familiar. She sighed. Do I really look that different without makeup? The woman lowered her hood, revealing long, luxurious hair. It wasn't so much platinum blonde as it was snow white. She flashed you a dazzling smile, and suddenly you recognized her. Evelyn Ecstasy, multi-platinum selling recording artist, and one of People Magazine's most beautiful people for 3 years and counting. Evelyn stuck out a hand. Nice to meet you, Shadow. I'm a big fan. You took her hand in yours. You could tell the truth. I'm a big fan of yours as well. You could lie. I'm a big fan of... Okay, so same thing, but truth or lie. What's a pop star doing here? Nice to meet you, too. Well, I mean, clearly we recognize her. But are we a fan of Evelyn Ecstasy? Well, maybe the chat should make that determination. So is it going to be number 1? We're a big fan, and it's the truth. Is it number 2? We're a big fan, but that's a lie. Is it number 3, what's a pop star doing here? Or is it number 4, nice to meet you too? You know, just keep it cool, keep it casual. You don't have to, you know, fall all over yourself, start drooling over Evelyn ecstasy or anything like that. You don't have to do that. It's actually pretty separated. Number 3 and 4 are pretty even. Number 3 is slightly in the lead. It looks like the chat feels that we should not be saying that we're a big fan. It looks like number 4 is probably going to come out on top. Seems so. So, we're going to go with number 4. Nice to meet you too. Oh, thank goodness, said Evelyn. You gave her a quizzical look and she looked embarrassed. It's just that most of the people I meet are either fans or, here especially, haters. It's just a relief that you're neither. Well, you can rest easy, you tell her. I'll be sure not to place you on a pedestal or critique your body on my blog. Evelyn stuck a pose. Psh, like you'd find anything to complain about here, she said as her theme music hit. If the two lovebirds... Okay, this guy's name is Mr. Awesome. I guess he probably should be something like this.
If the two lovebirds in the back would like to break it up, I think it's time we all headed back to the house,
Mr. Awesome said, and to your chagrin, you realized that everyone else was looking at you and Evelyn. Were you two being that loud? Evelyn gave you a sheepish but non-contrite shrug. Come on, let's get you settled in. The near Fall Academy dorm was in fact a refurbished mansion, and in typical reality show fashion, was needlessly large and senselessly ornate. If the producer's intention had been to give contestants a taste of the life of a gua star, then they'd overshot their mark. Maybe it was simply the fact that a few professional wrestlers spent much time at home, but you didn't know of any who had a house like this, not even solitary. One thing you hadn't expected was the fact that each wrestler had a separate room. The rooms were small, but they afforded a privacy that was a welcome surprise. They told us that they expected tensions to run high. Evelyn stopped in front of the room that had been assigned to you. So, they wanted to be sure that we had some privacy for venting and detox. There are a few other areas that are camera-free as well, like the clinic and, well, the bathrooms, obviously. You don't believe the rooms are camera-free, do you? Evelyn seemed taken aback for a second, then shook her head. I don't blame you for doubting that, but trust me, I think they're being sincere. It wasn't the contract after all. You'd have to take her word for it. The legalese had gone over your head. Besides, for a shot at the gua, you'd sign that contract with your own blood. Got bad luck with your neighbors, Evelyn said, pointing to first to the left, then to the right of your door. Zeus is fine, but I swear Velma Ray turns into a chainsaw at night. Where are you staying? Evelyn nodded towards the door from across yours. Well, I guess you didn't completely strike out in the neighbor department, she said, grinning. In the interest of being a good neighbor, do you have any questions? Not sure how much they told you about the show before bringing you in, but in practice, things may be a bit different. Let's see, there's 6 questions we could ask. How does the elimination process work? How will they determine the final winner? Who's the front runner? What do you think of the trainers? How have you liked it so far? What's your phone number? How does the elimination process work? Don't tell me they didn't explain that much to you. You shrugged. I know the criteria. A regular evaluation till the semifinals, with 50% from online voting, 20% from a challenge, and 10 each from trainers. That doesn't tell me how it works in reality. Well, Evelyn said, the first thing is that they don't cut just one each week. The second is that the trainers are so ridiculously stingy with their points that it really just comes down to the challenge and the online vote. Do you have a Toutler account or anything like that? What? A Toutler account? Is that like a bank? Colton blinks at you and you feel your cheeks flush. It doesn't matter. They'll set up a new one for you, and they won't let you use your old one. I mean, one exception, because apparently the record company threw a fit. You'll find the login details in the company in the computer in your room. It's not required, but if you don't interact with fans online, you're shooting yourself in the foot. She paused. Unless you tend to rub people the wrong way, in which case, the less said, the better. Don't don't go talking about your opinions about, like vaccines and such on the company Toutler account. It's probably just best for anyone if you kept that to yourself. You decide to ask, okay, so we can ask more than one question. How do they determine the final winner? Like the pay-per-view, Evelyn said, grinning at the chance to show off some wrestling knowledge. Last one standing. The difference being that once we hit the finals, the criteria changes. No popular vote. They're not saying whether to replace it, but I'm assuming that's when the Gua top brass get their say. Evelyn's voice took on a bitter tone. Can't just have anyone muddying up their ring, I suppose. You decide to ask, who is the front runner? Evelyn smiled. That depends on who you ask. Roderick thinks that they should just crown him, then use the rest of the episodes to show his highlight reels. Does he have the skills to support his big head? Evelyn grew thoughtful. He's good, no question, as long as the challenge is to his taste. I mean, he wouldn't look out of place in the Gua ring, but he's never going to be as big of a star as he thinks he should be. Kale's got a lot of technical skill, but is allergic to anything that reeks of showmanship. All around, I think Mako's the best wrestler in the academy, and as Princess Reaper, she's totally over in Japan, but she's still learning English, and over is the term commonly used to describe someone connecting with the fans, whether it's someone to root for or someone to revile. Basically, what kind of crowd reaction do you get? Do you get a crowd like you? Do they make a lot of noise for you? Do they buy your merchandise? Do they buy tickets to see you? It's how you determine the level of one's overness. The ivory-haired star shrugged. I guess in the end, it depends on what they're looking for. The trainers loved Ronnie, but he had to pull out because of an injury. Lawler's got that great paranoid survivalist gimmick. Manol and Velma are already breaking hearts, and Zeus is so strong that they'd be idiots not to sign him even if he doesn't win. You take off names on your fingers. I see you've mentioned everyone except yourself. Evelyn laughed, but it seemed forced. You can't be the front runner if no one expects you to win once the online voting portion is removed for the finals. Yeah, Evelyn is not a wrestler. She's coming in from a different area of expertise. So, what chance does she possibly have? I mean, having her go on the show is good for publicity, but surely she won't win. The conversation with Evelyn is interrupted by a scornful voice. Well, Ecstasy, that didn't take you long. A trio of wrestlers are walking down the hall towards you. 2 men and one woman. The speaker was a shirtless Brazilian with abs that seemed to have been chiseled from granite. Manol Grande, who as Rysteria was a regular on the indie circuit. The woman was a tall, full-figured blonde who you pegged to be a Southern belle before she even opened her mouth. The larger man was an old acquaintance, Cale King, an amateur wrestler from St. Braun's University who had been 2 years younger than you. Cale and the woman were looking at the speaker in consternation. Now, Mana Sugar, the woman began. Oh, come on, Velma. Manoa indicated Evelyn with a wave of his hand. You think it's a coincidence that this starlet ingratiates herself to Ronnie, milks him for all he knows, and then when it looks like Ronnie is pulling away from the pack, bam! Ronnie falls down the stairs? He was drunk, you idiot, Evelyn hissed, and I was in bed. Tss. Ronnie could hold his liquor, Manol said. He must have been spiked. And who was it who usually drank with him? Manol, come on, Cale said. Lawler's supposed to be the paranoid one. It's not paranoia if someone's really out to get you. Manol threw his hands up in the air. First it was Skip with the food poisoning. Then the top rope giving way when Nitro went for the springboard moonsault. Each time, someone stands out on this show. Are you... Evelyn was almost spluttering with rage. Are you really accusing me of... I know you spend an awful lot of time cooped up in your room. Oh no, this is still Manol talking. I know you spend an awful lot of time cooped up in your room. Now, maybe that's just because you think you're better than us, Miss Grammy winner. Minot was within arm's reach of Evelyn now. Or maybe you're cooking up a new batch of poisons for the rest of us. You piece of... Evelyn growled and pulls her fist back. Yeah, let's punch it. That seems like a Cunoesse thing to do. Minot was so focused on Evelyn that your punch completely blindsided him. The impact sent him staggering toward the wall. He put a hand to his face, which came away covered in blood. He spat more of it onto the floor before growling low in his throat and advancing towards you, murder in his eyes. Oh, you want some of this, lady? Minot began to rock, sway in a manner that you recognize as a capoeira move. Let me show you how we do mixed matches down it. Kale pulled Minot away. Enough already, man. I'm sorry, so sorry, Velma said. Yeah, that's the end of the fight. Victory music playing. As Kale manhandled Minot into the other rooms, she took Evelyn's hands. You know I think the world of you, Evelyn. Minot's just been on edge lately. He doesn't really mean any of that. Could have fooled me, Evelyn said. Then she shook her head. It's no reflection on you, Velma. Don't worry. Velma smiled at you and extended a hand. Velma Ray, folks call me Sunshine. Sorry if this wasn't the best of introductions. Velma turned to follow Kale and Minot, but then stopped to give you an endearingly lopsided grin. So, welcome to Near Fall Academy, I guess. Now, Near Fall Academy, Week 11. As you relate the events of your first day at the NFA, Guy Colton rubs his chin thoughtfully. Yes, your arrival was one of the turning points of the series, and one of the most controversial as well. In one day, the Academy was bereft of two fan favorites, Root Canal and Ronnie Dresden. Yes, the big fan favorite wrestler, Root Canal. And there was a relative unknown in their place. Did you anticipate that your arrival would cause that much bad blood? Well, let me correct you there. I'm not an unknown. I wrestled in the Borderless Wrestling Federation for 2 years, and I was one of their main draws. My matches with Twister and Trollonymous made Spandex Savior's Match of the Year shortlist last year, among other lists. My feud with Dame Sagramore... Colton raises his hands. I meant no insult. My point is that you hadn't been on the radar. In terms of wrestlers, the Gua would be, Guy. You interrupt, then tap the tip of your nose and grin. My point is, that I wasn't on the radar, I should have been. Regardless, Colton says, it's moments like your sudden arrival that made Near Fall Academy such must-see television for the past 10 weeks. And in fact, the next swerve that took place was in the very next episode, and coincidentally, or maybe not so coincidentally, it involved Manolo Grande suddenly withdrawing from the Academy due to an unspecified family emergency. I wanted to get your thoughts about that, considering that all the viewers at home got was a video of Mr. Awesome making the announcement. There wasn't even an exit interview, which we all found to be very strange. Off the record, Shadow, what really happened to Manolo? You remember that day well. It happened the night after you arrived, after most of the day had passed with Manolo mysteriously absent. When he appeared with the trainers at the end of the day, he appeared shaken and pale. He hadn't said a word the whole time. Like Colton said, it was Mr. Awesome who made the announcement. Maybe they hadn't shown Manolo standing there mutely beside Awesome all throughout. Then some security guards had hustled Manolo at the Academy like he was a celebrity and you were paparazzi. Awesome had warned the rest of you not to talk about Manolo to anyone, but you aren't on the record at the moment. Well, has the interview begun? I mean, I suppose he said that he would tell us when the interview has begun, and he did put his microphone down, so I assume everything we're saying is being recorded. Maybe we'll drop some hints that we had something to do with his exit. Well, you begin, your voice taking on a conspiratorial tone. Let's just say he crossed the wrong person, wink, wink. Colton leans towards you. You don't say. And that wrong person wouldn't happen to be, you. Would it? You just smile mysteriously. Who knows? I'm just saying. People should be careful who they piss off in this business. Wink. Wink. Like him or not, Manol's abrupt exit must have been quite a surprise. It was, you say, and Colton nods along with you. How'd you feel when you found out? Relieved? Well, let's see. Well, it looks like good riddance to bad rubbish would be a lie, so maybe we're not so happy about him leaving. We don't know what the situation is yet. We only know that we punched him after he accused Evelyn. Maybe we'll say that it made me feel like Manol may have been onto something, after all. Colton leans forward intrigued. What do you mean by that? There were secrets at the academy, and I wanted to dig them up. Colton strokes his chin. And is that when you decided you want to expose the perpetrator? That's what seemed to occupy your free time over the next few weeks, until, of course, that memorable confrontation in episode 8. Either it was self-preservation, get them before they get me, or I couldn't in good conscience let it continue. Well, Cunoesse seems like someone who acts out of self-preservation, so let's go with that. 3 weeks ago, near Fall Academy, week 8. You waited for the shadowy figure to finish soaking the bathroom floor with soapy water before stepping out of your hiding place in the corridor and turning on the light. Surprise! Your target didn't react quite the way you expected, however. Instead of freezing in place, the wrestling saboteur sprinted out of the bathroom and was past you before you could react. Cursing, you followed, but skidded to a halt when you turned into the kitchen and found Velma Sunshine Ray twirling a cook's knife in her hands, its blade glinting in the moonlight. "I'm curious," she said. "What gave me away?" You were there when Manol blabbed his theory? You were too nice to be real, the knife in your hands? I was expecting it to be Zeus. I was completely wrong. You're still trying to get your head around it being Velma, of all people. Velma took a step towards you, and you realized that it was in your best interest to keep talking. Honestly, I wasn't sure who was knocking off the competition, but I did figure out the MO. You spoke while surreptitiously backing away. You could shout for help, but it was 3 in the morning and everyone else was asleep. "Stop moving, Shadow," Sunshine said in a pleasant tone of voice, "but do tell me more." "Except for poor Manol, you've been targeting those who excel in more than one challenge." You stopped moving backwards, but began to circle left instead, placing a table between you and Sunshine. Now that Roderick has aced 2 challenges, mental challenges for God's sake, he's become too big of a threat to ignore. You always try to make things look like an accident, and since we know Roderick's middle-of-the-night bathroom breaks, that seemed to be the best place to wait. My, right on all counts," Sunshine said, brandishing the knife. "Well, except for one. You seem to think this little table makes for a good defense." Well, we could try to stall her. We could kick the... Okay, well, we have bad luck with throwing. Maybe we should not throw something at her, considering that has not worked out it's not worked out for us previously. So maybe we agree with her that the table is not much of a defense, and we kick it. I wasn't thinking defense, you said, and then kicked the table at Sunshine mid-sentence. But Sunshine was lightning fast, and she was up and over the table before it could hit her, her knife glinting in a silvery arc as it came down at you. You dodged the first blow, but you weren't so lucky with the next, and you let out a shout of pain as a line of fire erupted across your left bicep. You kicked Sunshine away and pressed a hand across your arm. You could feel the blood leaking from your wound. The kitchen was only lit by moonlight, and in the near darkness you saw Sunshine crouch down low, ready to spring. You raised your good arm to fend her off, but as she was just about to jump, a team of security officers piled on top of her, restraining her as a medic rushed to your side. Well, that was close. And, I gotta say, I'm quite surprised to find out that apparently all these weeks that we were on this wrestling show, apparently like some kind of version of Danganronpa was going on. And I guess that we're not actually reading through it, we're just getting a flashback of it. It's like we're joining in after it's all over, and we're just being told about what happened. Like an entire game happened in this flashback. Okay, we got an achievement. We uncovered the truth. Now, Near Fall Academy, week 11. Guy shakes his head. I wish we could have seen that. All they showed was this crazy montage, but you did come out of it looking very heroic. You flexed your left arm. Even after all this time, still didn't feel quite right. Funny. I didn't feel very heroic. Isn't that the mark of a true hero, though? Guy gave you a gentle smile. Who knows how far she might have gone if you hadn't forced her to show her true colors. Did you ever find out why she did what she did? You shake your head. You doubt you ever will. It wasn't the Gua's style to let something like that gain too much publicity. Well... I hope she gets the help she needs. Sounds a little bit too compassionate for Cunoesse. I hope she rots in prison. She almost killed you. She's a danger to everyone, and to you in particular. Guy checks his watch. And I think that's enough of a warm-up. He takes your microphone from the table and hands it to you. Remember, we'll only be recording since they want to show snippets of the interview in this week's episode of Nafa. But we're going to release the whole thing on my site a week after. So we can do this all in one shot. No retakes, no cuts. You ready for the real deal? Hell yes! This should be a cinch. Don't worry, it'll be easy. Guy gestures to the cameraman and flicks on his microphone, and instantly something in him seems to change. It's just a subtle shift of a facial expression, a change in posture, a lower tone of voice, but Guy Colton suddenly exudes charisma. Not that he was exactly bland before, but going on record seems to bring out a different side of him, a heightened level of his usual personality. Marks and smarks and hoodwink significant others. Welcome to a very special edition of Curtain Jerker Says. Colton salutes the camera. We're interviewing the finalists of the hottest reality show on television today. And the only one a true wrestling fan would be caught dead watching, Near Fall Academy. It's a show with more athleticism than the Olympics, more conflict than the History Channel, and more twists and turns than your mom's two favorite afternoon soaps. And speaking of twists, how about a finalist who wasn't even in the competition until 5 weeks ago? Let's raise the curtain now for Miss Shadow Cunoesse. You take a deep breath, and before you could say your first word, you decide that your strategy for this interview will be to... Well, chat, maybe you should answer this. Should we, number 1, be myself, or should we, number 2, stay in character as a heel? I mean... Maybe we're more comfortable. Which are we more comfortable as? Are we more comfortable as ourselves, or are we more comfortable if we stay in character? Well, it does seem that most of everyone is voting to stay in character, which, yeah, I mean, we are an active, wrestler on this show. We shouldn't just break character like that. So, yeah, we'll end this vote there, and we'll say stay in character as a heel. You decide to stick to your heel bad girl character as much as possible. That's the character that you're going to get over with the fans, both as a contestant and as a Gua wrestler, and you want to establish your alignment quickly in their minds. As promised, Guy starts with the easy questions, with only a passing mention of your amateur wrestling accomplishments. You spend the first few minutes talking about your early memories of wrestling, the stars you looked up to, your favorite matches. You also talk about what it was like growing up in Martinez in Salinde, and whether or not wrestling fans were looked down upon in your school. You take these softball questions and answer with a charisma that rivals Guy's own. You fully immerse yourself in your character, and while you feel a twinge of anxiety that you're making yourself out to look like an arrogant jerk. It's all part of the job in the end. Realizing that you know what you're doing, Guy begins to ask more interesting questions, and the two of you are quickly engaged in vigorous conversation. Guy's enjoying himself, and it's coming across to the camera. Soon enough, Guy starts talking about your time at Near Fall Academy. You talk a bit about your first day on the grounds, and the fact that you've already spoken about this with Guy makes the words come out easier. One thing fans always wonder about, Guy says, is how you contestants spend your free time in the house. After all, a week goes by in real time between episodes. Free time? You laugh. Does 5 hours of sleep count? You have to understand, Guy. They're trying to cram years' worth of developmental training into 12 weeks. 6 in my case. We have to be training from morning till night. We're required to have a set number of training sessions per day. We do have our choice in terms of instructors, since each has their own specialty. Awesome covers strength training and ring psychology. Tempora drills on us mat wrestling, while the Dragon Drummer is... I wonder what his gimmick would be. The Dragon Drummer is great at the showmanship side and at promos. Who do we spend up most of our time with? Well... let's see. Mr. Awesome is about the, the strength training, ring psychology. Dragon Drummer, showmanship, and promos. Or we could be half and half between the two. I mean, I guess probably we'd want to be half and half, I would assume. And you've certainly shown off the strength of that, shown off the results of that training over the past few weeks. After all, you've survived when so many other worthy competitors have fallen by the wayside. Guy turns from you to speak to the camera. The weekly challenges on Gua Superstars have gotten only more and more intense as the show has gone on, and last week brought out not only a double challenge, but what I think would be fair to say were the two most physically demanding challenges of the entire season. You nod as Guy turns back to you for affirmation. Physically demanding was certainly one way of putting it. 3 of the Gua's biggest stars had arrived at the Academy the week before to administer not 1 but 2 Gua challenges, only the second time a double challenge had taken place during the season. The first challenge was administered by Harley and her manager, Quinn. Harley and Quinn were a funhouse mirror version of the traditional manager and wrestler duo. Harley, the wrestler, was fast but frail, and better at countering an insult than a hold. Quinn, meanwhile, was a giant of a woman who never said a word on camera. Although Harley claimed that Quinn was the author of the many letters of challenge she issued to her opponents. The challenge made use of both their strengths. The contestants locked fingers with Quinn and had to have a promo exchange with Harley, while her ridiculously strong manager steadily forced the contestants' fingers backwards. You'd be judged by how long you could last before crying out in pain, and by how well you parried Harley's verbal assault. The second challenge was a simple mat wrestling sparring match. Easy enough compared to the first, except your opponent was none other than sure-to-be Hall of Famer known as Super Horns. I guess the concept of a manager being strong and powerful, that is something that you might occasionally see if the strong, powerful guy is not very good in the ring. So how do you make use of him? You have him be someone's like bodyguard or something. You occasionally have seen that. Because then you can make that guy look good by just only occasionally getting in the ring and beating people up, and he doesn't have to actually expose that he's not very good by having a whole match. It's something that you can see sometimes. The reason for the sudden spike of difficulty became clear when Mr. Awesome announced that the end of the week evaluation was going to have a different criteria. Instead of 100 points distributed between fan voting, challenges, and trainers, with fan voting carrying the most weight, now performance in the challenge would be the most important category. Also, instead of eliminating a contestant, they would be awarding immunity to the one with the highest score. So, Guy continues, for the first challenge, Harley and Quinn, what was your strategy going in? Well, we did split our training between Awesome and Dragon, so I guess that would equate to us dividing our effort equally. Guy shakes his head. That didn't really work out well, did it? You wince. No, not really. You tried, but the best you were able to manage was 3 minutes of resistance against Quinn while calling Harley names. Not exactly impressive on either count, though it was clear that it was exactly the kind of performance that Harley and Quinn had expected. That was hardly comforting. I guess we should have specialized instead of distributing our training. And then after all was said and done, you still had to deal with super horns. Super horns. The Puroresu Japanese style professional wrestling master. I mean, you can... Puroresu is Japanese wrestling. You can tell because it's English, but puro, and resu is the first couple of syllables of wrestling. Puro wrestling is that's where the word comes from. The one woman many smart fans believe could defeat Solitary in a fight. If not for the fact that Super Horns detested real fights, was Solitary's closest friend, and a woman, and hence not qualified to compete for the GWA World Championship. For you to look as if you've belonged in the same ring as Super Horns, never mind standing out at all next to the consummate performer, would have been a feat for a wrestler with 5 times your experience. To say that it was a daunting task was an understatement. Were you at all nervous when she picked you to be the first one for her challenge? Let's see. Were we nervous about Super Horns? We were nervous, but meeting a lot of stars. Not really. We've been in the ring with legends before. Well, I mean, if we're staying in character, then it should be... No, I've been in the ring with legends before. 1 week ago, Near Fall Academy, week 10. Except for your opponents, the trainers, and the camera crew, the Nafa gym was empty when you arrived for Super Horns' challenge. The star herself was already in the ring, running the ropes. As you entered the ring, you took some time to observe the legend up close. She was tall for a Japanese woman, which was still short for a GWA wrestler. But her body gave off a feeling of efficiency, even before one took into account the grace of her movements. There was a compact strength to Super Horns' body, not merely that of a coiled spring, but a coiled snake. Something dynamic and alive. And then, of course, there was the mask. Black and red in style like the helmet of a Power Ranger, except for the 2 plastic horns jutting from the temples. The face of the woman behind the mask was no longer a secret. They'd done the big unmasking angle years ago, but the sight of it was still enough to inspire a certain awe. When Super Horns caught sight of you, she gave you a dignified nod, then retreated to the opposite side of the ring. She didn't say a word, and you weren't expecting to hear anything. One of the pillars of Super Horns' gimmick is that she would never say more than 3 words per show. It made those words all the more impactful. Super Horns assumed a fighting stance and crooked a finger at you. Alright, so from the description, I guess Super Horns' girl, Jushin Thunder Liger. That's how it sounds like how they're describing the mask. Okay, so should we take the initiative, or should we wait for Super Horns to make the first move? Well, maybe the chat could make a little vote on that. Should we rush Super Horns and go for the first move, or should we go on the defensive and wait for Super Horns to go? How should we begin our match with this Japanese legend? It's fairly even. Kind of going back and forth. Looks like number 1 is slowly taking the lead. Number 1 is to take the initiative. Well, they say that the best defense is a good offense, after all. So maybe we do take the initiative against Super Horns. It looks like that is what we're going to do. We're going to take the initiative. You decide to try your luck by throwing a no-nonsense punch, feinting a punch, then firing off a drop kick, clinching with her, then trying to put her in a hold, charging in and going for the body slam. All right, well, something that we haven't really looked at is there is a button here for stats. You can see what we have here. 53% strength, technique 49, promo ability 63, and then there are some like sort of words not really coming right now. Kayfabe 45%, reality 55. We're pretty even on that. Favor 25%, heat 75. Yeah, we have been playing the heel. Ring awareness is 35. Ring flash is 65. Okay, we're much more flashy than we are a ring general. So, strength... Well, they're almost even, but strength is a little over technique. Well... Maybe just a punch. Or maybe we should go... We do love the sound of a good drop kick. We know that. Maybe we should try that. We'll feint a punch and then try to fire off a drop kick. You feinted a punch and then quickly jumped up and threw a drop kick at Superhorns' head, but your kick caught nothing. But as she ducked low, then took you off your feet as you landed... Took you off your feet as you landed with a perfectly executed leg sweep. Okay, so she ducked, and then... I'm trying to think about how this looks. You jump up through a drop kick. She ducks low, you miss. It sounds like you land on your feet, but that wouldn't really make sense. But that's how it would have to go. You would land on your feet, and then you get swept, I guess. You landed hard and rolled away, conscious that you were a sitting duck for one of Superhorns' many submission holds. But Superhorns merely took a step back and waited for you to get to your feet. Superhorns wagged a finger at you, and once more invited you to come at her. You decided you'd take the more cautious route this time. You and Superhorns circled each other, warily on your part, patiently on her. Finally, Superhorns inclined her head towards you in a slight nod, almost as if she was acknowledging your caution, before she blurred toward you with such speed that you almost forgot to dodge. You threw yourself to the left just as something flashed past the place where your head had been. Before you could retaliate or move away, you felt legs scissor around your waist from behind as Superhorns placed an arm around your neck and your head. A sleeper hold. Let's see. Well, we don't have options 3 or 4. We could ram our head against her chin, or we could fall on the back and hope we dislodge her. I think trying to give her some headbutts sounds a little better. Superhorn seemed to anticipate our move, and as we jerked our head backwards, she moved her own to the left, and we only managed a glancing blow. Superhorns redoubled the strength of the sleeper, and our vision soon began to blur, but before we completely lost consciousness, Superhorns released us. We staggered to a corner, and Superhorns stood silently in the middle of the ring. She waited for you to recover before coming at you again. After just 5 more minutes of fast-paced, hard-hitting, in-ring action, it became readily apparent that you simply could not keep up with Superhorns in the ring. You were breathing hard, stumbling around, and obviously too fatigued for Superhorns to risk allowing you to try any dangerous moves on her. After locking in a figure 4 leg lock, Superhorns ruffled your hair and hood up. "Get out of the ring, hothead," you heard Tempora say as you lay on the mat. "That was pathetic, man." I don't know. It just seems like we never do that well in the ring, do we? We do talk a big game, but just never seem to be able to get it done when it counts. Now, Near Fall Academy, week 11. You and Guy finished talking about how you performed about Superhorns, and the former wrestler shakes his head. Taking performances in both challenges into account, Zeus clearly performed the best, so I don't think you were surprised that you weren't granted immunity. What do you think about Zeus earning a slot in the finals? Well, let's see. We could say that he's a great competitor, but we wish it had been someone else. We could say that he's a great competitor, but we'll find a way to beat him. We could say that it doesn't matter who the other finalists are, we're going to win. We could say it's pure luck, he's not in our league. Or we could play the heel and say it's pure luck, he's not in our league. Well, I think we've established by this point that we are keeping kayfabe during this interview. Well, I think that's almost it for our interview, and I'm sure that I speak for everyone watching at home when I say that I can't wait to see how you do in this final stretch of the competition. But Guy holds up a finger and gives you an apologetic smile. I know that I promised I wouldn't hit you with any too difficult questions, but my audience would kill me if I didn't at least attempt to ask you this one. You and Miss Evelyn Ecstasy, what's the real story? Evelyn. This is Chapter 6, Heart's Desire. Evelyn. That wasn't an easy question to answer. Even a day later, as you're about to face a new challenge for the right to face Zeus, and one other in the finals, you're still thinking about Guy Colton's last question and wondering if you gave the right answer. 5 weeks ago, Near Fall Academy, Week 6. I can't do this, said Evelyn Ecstasy. You peeked over... This is some good training music. You peeked over the edge of the ND tower and took over the 600-foot drop to the ground. In front of you, El Ala, the former GWA Tag Team Champions, were giving Sunshine a pep talk as she was being fitted with the body harness. Her barely suppressed moans of terror were loud in the frigid early morning air. I can't, repeated Evelyn. The pop star was next in line, followed by you. I shouldn't need to anyway. When would we have to drop 1,000 feet at a Gua event, huh? I know El Ala are high flyers, but this is ridiculous. Well, let's see. We could correct. We're only 621 feet in the air. We could mention that Flash and Frank did enter via zipline in Ring of Valhalla 7, or ridiculous is the point of reality television, which is probably the correct answer. If Evelyn heard you, she didn't acknowledge it. And the risks, my God. Do you know how many bungee jumping accidents there are in a year? No, but I'm sure you'll tell me, you deadpanned. But again, it was like talking to a wall or a crazy person. It's not like I don't want this enough. Of course I want it, Evelyn mumbled as if to herself. Enough to die for it, of course, but I mean... Evelyn, you said. I'd risk it if it was sure it'd get me in. I mean, that's what they wanted, but I would risk it only for the chance to get in rather than a guarantee. I mean, death is... No, I won't think about it, but I have to be rational about Evelyn. She blinked, startled, then looked at you. Well, let's not play the heel with Evelyn. I mean, we don't need to be kayfabe with her. You're making me nervous, honestly. Sorry, Evelyn said. She craned her head to look over the edge and shuddered. If you know you're scared of heights, then stop doing that. Sorry, she said again. I can't help it. How can you be so calm? I'd be a whole lot calmer if you kept your nerves yourself, you replied. Evelyn looked like she was about to apologize again, but a cross look from you shut her up. 4 weeks ago, near Fall Academy, Week 7. The blow came out of nowhere. 1 minute you were helping Mr. Awesome set up the ring ropes, and next you're floored by a vicious kick to the spine. You were barely aware of Mr. Awesome shouting at your assailant.
And believe me, I will have you off the show tonight if you can't give me a good reason why.
She's the one. The man who spoke and sounded calm, but the voice nonetheless sent a chill down your spine. Oh, that was Zeus's voice. And while the muscular Filipino was easily the most intimidating competitor at the academy, while not quite as strong as Roderick Lynn, what you seen of Zeus spoke a brutal efficiency and a single-minded determination. He was constantly seen either praying or training, and he kept himself aloof from all the dorm-level drama that the others seemed to revel in. Until now, it seemed.
The one what?
Snapped Mr. Awesome. The one who's been, sabotaging the contestants.
Not you too,
Mr. Awesome groaned.
Look, just because you had some bad luck yesterday.
She's been, sneaking around at night, Zeus said before turning to you. Go ahead, deny it. You couldn't, because it was true. You've been spending your nights trying to track down the mysterious wrestling saboteur ever since Manol's rant. You could simply admit that, but that might dig you into a deeper hole. You brushed yourself off and rose to your feet. Zeus stood just behind Mr. Awesome, and although his face was impassive, you could see that he was poised to move. Before you could decide on a course of action, someone else spoke up. That's easy to explain. She was with me. The three of you turned to see Evelyn leaning against the door frame, a lazy grin on her face. Mr. Awesome looked from you to Evelyn and back again.
Well, now.
Zeus, meanwhile, had begun to move towards Evelyn. He stopped in front of the pop star and stared down at her with blank eyes. Then, without another word, he moved past her and out the door.
Hey, Zeus, I'm not done talking to you.
Mr. Awesome followed Zeus out the doorway, leaving only you and Evelyn in the gym. Conscious of the possibility that the cameras were running, you drew her in close to you before speaking. Thank you. Evelyn gave you a small smile. I know you can handle yourself, but it seemed like you were in a bit of a bind. I figured that this way, you'd at least be able to keep the reason for your late-night wanderings to yourself. Well, it seems that I owe you then, you said. But I doubt your record company will be happy about what the dirt sheets will say. Like they've been happy with me at all since I joined the academy. Evelyn's smile grew wider. I'm sure you'll find some way to pay me back. Now, near Fall Academy, week 11. You suppose that you can see why Guy and other viewers would think there's something going on between you and Evelyn. The pop star had been rather clingy, for lack of a better word, to you for the first few weeks you were on the show. Eventually, she seemed to realize that you wanted nothing to do with her, and you didn't speak much to each other. And then, 2 weeks ago, Exley finally quit Nafa. You returned to a life of ease and luxury, you're sure. Well, good riddance. There's no room for quitters in professional wrestling. You were glad for the opportunity to put any rumors about you and Ecstasy to rest. You have bigger things to worry about, after all. You may have lost out to Zeus in the race for the final spot in the finals, but you still have one more chance. Today is the final elimination challenge, and you and the rest of the final 5 will face off to determine the 2 who will go on to face Zeus. You haven't been told anything about the upcoming challenge, and you feel yourself buzzing with excitement and anticipation as you make your way to the gym.
Welcome to your final hurdle, maggots.
As usual, Mr. Awesome gives his introductory remarks while nonchalantly doing one-handed chin-ups. Considering his considerable girth, this is an achievement on more than one level. Today, he's flanked by a pair of women sporting the skates, pads, and helmets of a roller derby team. None other than the GWA Women's Tag Team Champions, Jenny Jammer and Sasha Stripe, otherwise known as the Derby Rollers.
My friends here need no introductions, I'm sure, but your challenge today does, ladies.
Sasha smiled at the assembled competitors. First of all, congratulations to you all for making it this far. Today's challenge will involve something indispensable to any wrestler. Teamwork, continues Jenny without missing a beat. Jenny and Sasha are 2 of those people who manage to look like siblings, even if they aren't related, and in the Rollers' case, are of different races. Now, some people think that only tag teams need teamwork, but anyone who has been in the ring knows how important trust is in any match, says Sasha, leaving unspoken the reality that kayfabe opponents always needed to protect each other from harm. So for the final challenge, the 4 of you up for elimination will be divided into 2 pairs, and one of each pair will be in the ring blindfolded. The in-ring combatants will have to depend on the instructions of their partner outside the ring in order to sweep their opponents off their feet. The first team to score a fall against its opponent is going to the finals, finished Jenny. Any questions? A team challenge. You hadn't expected that. We hate team challenges. We like team challenges. Or it doesn't matter what we throw our way. Well, I mean, Cunoesse did, want to be with Kuno, so she did like being in a team. Okay, let's say that we like team challenges. The 4 contestants set to compete for the final two slots are All In, Roderick Lynn, Kale King, Mako, Princess Reaper, Arai, and yourself. Since Mako and Lynn have been tight since day one, Lynn being the only other wrestler in the dorms capable of speaking Japanese, a consequence of his time with the Japanese promotions, that means you and Kale will be the second team. Lynn is obviously going to be the one in the ring, says Kale, so at least we don't need to discuss who gets which role, huh? Of course not, you say with a smile. I'll take him on. Kale looks flabbergasted. What? But you can't. I mean? Because I'm a woman. Usually that's how intergender matches go, yes. You can't fight the other gender. Whenever, one team tags out, then the other one has to tag out as well. Most promotions that do intergender matches would work that way, yes. We can fight for it if you like. Kale raises his hands and backs off. Okay, if you want it that badly, you got it. And that, in a nutshell, is why Kale never made any waves in the NCAA, and why you'll be glad to haul his ass to the NFA finals. All that means is that it'll come down to you and Zeus. Oh, you've got to be kidding me, says Lynn as you step in the ring. You've got balls, lady, which is more I can say for your partner if he's really hiding behind you. You flex your fingers. If you were smart, you'd be the one hiding, Lynn. I don't think your ego will be able to take it after a girl kicks your ass. Lynn glares across the ring at you as your blindfolds are fastened across your eyes. You've been asking for a beatdown since day one, Cunoesse. You hear Lynn say as your vision is obscured by the cloth. I'm going to enjoy kicking your sorry rear out of this competition. Maybe I read over too fast, but were blindfolds mentioned? Okay, it's blindfolds. All right. Oh, we're going to move from our corner before the bell rings. You know better than to give Lynn a clue as to where you are. Without your eyes, sound is the only sense you have to go by. Use the time before the bell to move away from your corner. Your patience pays off when, as soon as the bell rings, you hear Lynn's feet pound across the mat, followed by the crunch of a shoulder hitting the ring post. You hear Lynn growl low in his throat, but he stops soon after. As always, he's smarter than people give him credit for. He knows that the time for talk is over, at least for the two of you. With Lynn's initial gambit a failure, your partners begin to shout. You can hear Mako snapping off rapid commands in Japanese. She seems frustrated, but then she should have expected Lynn to be hard to control. Meanwhile, Kale is being very cautious, but so far his directions have allowed you to evade a clothesline and almost catch Lynn with a kick. You know that Lynn gets frustrated easily, and the longer that the challenge goes, the more likely he is to do something reckless. The thing is, you're starting to get frustrated too. Part of you just wants to challenge Lynn to confront you head on, so you can settle this once and for all. Okay, but for whatever reason, we don't have the option to challenge Lynn, so we have to depend on the partner. I mean, maybe that's for the best. You know, taking our own initiative has not exactly gone so well for us in the past. You rein in your impatience and take it slow, taking care to listen for and move according to your partner's cues. When Lynn challenges you to settle things head-to-head, you take it as a sign your strategy is working. You ignore him, and he only grows louder, calling you a coward, which of course just makes it easier to hone in on him. Finally, you hear your partner shout, 3! And you drop down and sweep your legs out to your right, 3 o'clock, and feel an impact. You hear Lynn curse, but then you feel a weight drop against your shoulders, and realize that Lynn has fallen on top of you, rather than onto the mat. Ha ha! Lynn crows. My feet are still on the ground, sucker. And you can feel him begin to push down against you, trying to flatten you on the mat. Does he counter his strength with our own and lift him off me, grab for his legs and flip him over? Well, strength is 53. I mean, that is... I don't know if that would... I don't think it's considered high. It's higher than technique, but I don't know if it's high enough to be considered strong enough to do this. But it is the higher number, so maybe we'll try to go for that. Not for long, you say, but when you try to lift Lynn up, you find he's simply too heavy. But luckily for you, the fact that he's practically lying across your shoulders gives you enough leverage to dump him onto his rear as you move out from under him. It's not impressive, but it gets you the win. I'm trying to think about how this looks like. You'd see, you try to lift, you're under him, you try to lift him up, he's too heavy, he's practically lying across your shoulders, so you can dump him, like you sort of roll, I guess you kind of roll him up. It's kind of hard to picture in my head. You remove your blindfold to find Lynn storming towards you. You got lucky, punk. You and I know it, and the world will too.
When you're right,
interrupts Mr. Awesome.
She got luck, and you're out of it. So why don't you step out of the ring while you still got some dignity, eh?
Lynn shoots you one final glare, then spits on the mat and leaves the ring. Mr. Awesome motions for Zeus and Kale to enter the ring. Kale shakes your hand. "Looks like you did it," he says. "I hope I was of some help."
"Ladies and gentlemen,"
roars Mr. Awesome,
"let's hear it for the finalists of Near Fall Academy Season 1.
Zeus walks over next to you and Kale as the trainers, crew, and derby rollers break into a round of applause. You look up at the bigger man, who inclines his head to you slightly. And with that, there were 3. Wednesday Night Wrestling, episode 643. Orleans Dome, Lafayette, Louisiana. Waiting just behind the curtain at the backstage foyer at the Orleans Dome, you hear the line that has opened Wednesday Night Wrestling for the past 10 years, growled in the distinctive baritone of the great narrator Nick Varnish. "Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children big and small, the Dobbs family proudly presents..." You can feel the arena voice vibrate in response to the chorus of voices that chant along with the great N. "Wednesday Night Wrestling." That's the cue for the pyrotechnics to go off, and in spite of the impressive booms from the fireworks, the applause and cheers of the crowd almost drowns them out. You can't help getting goosebumps. It's one thing to listen to that reaction while reading television or even sitting in the crowd. It's quite another thing to be hearing it knowing that you'll be walking out to the ring in a few moments, when the time comes for the winner of Near Fall Academy to be declared. The backstage area is full of people rushing back and forth. You just came out of makeup and don't recognize anyone in the area. It's mostly production staff, with the wrestlers still likely in the locker room area or the cafeteria. You wonder if you'll see JJ before you head out. Oh yeah, JJ could be here. Well, if it happens, it happens. You feel a tap on your shoulder and look down to see a harried-looking young woman with a pierced nose holding up a small transparent disc like a contact lens. "Put it in your left ear." Before you can ask anything, he sighs. "Special earpiece, but in case you need to hear any instructions from Mr. Dundee." He squints up at you. "You do know that most of the fighting is fake, right?" You grit your teeth and loom over the gopher. "Now see here." He's already walking away. "Whatever. Just put it in or Dundee will chew you out. There's a video to introduce NFA, then you're out in 5. Find a mirror." Your mind wanders as you hear the video montage begin to play outside, reminding viewers of WNW just what Near Fall Academy had been about. Suddenly you hear the great N address the crowd once again. The first NFA video package must be over. "And now, let's call our finalists down to the ring. First up, for Martinez Insulinde." You take a deep breath. This is it. You march down to the ramp, to the Near Fall Academy theme, and wonder what it would be like to have coming out to Broken Shell. The fans are giving you a polite round of applause, and while you can see a handful who are rooting for you, complete with signs, most of the people in the audience don't know who you are. Well, I mean, we always keep our character, of course. We're going to play the heel. You enter the ring gingerly, almost as you're afraid it might disappear at any instant. As you wait for all the finalists to be assembled in the squared circle, you take your time to look out at the thousands of people in the arena. Or try to, at least. The way the lights are positioned, intentionally or not, you can really only see the circle of fans fortunate or rich enough to have ringside seats, but while you can't see everyone, it certainly sounds like you can hear thousands of voices. A wordless rumble that reverberates down your spine. So this is what it feels like, you think to yourself. You shift your attention from the crowd to the ring itself. The ring crew has outdone themselves. The ring looks like the stage for a posh awards ceremony, complete with a huge GWA logo suspended over the ring. The GWA's AAA trainers are there, of course, with each so different from the other, yet equally uncomfortable in their formal attire. Aside from the great N, the 3 judges that would decide, or rather have already decided, the winner of the competition are seated on an elevated platform in the middle of the ring. Seeing the panel of judges just makes you remember your first encounter with them 2 days ago a meeting most fans will never hear about. 2 days ago. Where are we going? You asked Mr. Awesome, trying to suppress a yawn. He'd woken you at 4 in the morning and told you to come with him. You figured it was some new surprise challenge, but instead he had you join him in the backseat of a nondescript black SUV. For the first time in weeks, you were leaving the academy grounds.
You're off to see the wizard, hothead,
said Awesome.
Well, in this case, wizards, plural.
You weren't awake enough to deal with the riddles, so instead you asked, if I become a wrestling superstar, will you stop calling me hothead?
No,
he said. Then,
we're here.
Here was apparently the basement car park that Hollywood uses for 4 out of 5 police procedurals. You passed quickly through the eerily empty space, down a claustrophobic corridor, into an elevator, where Mr. Awesome punched the 6 button. No, seriously, where are we, Mr. Awesome? You don't like all of this mystery, cloak and dagger stuff. You're a wrestler, not a secret agent. Awesome gave you a knowing smile, but didn't say anything else until the elevator doors opened, revealing a well-lit, plushly carpeted room that looked like the waiting area in a law firm.
After you,
he said. You stepped into the room, feeling the hairs on the back of your neck rise. The 3 people waiting for you were some of the most powerful in the GWA. Alex Dobbs looked more like a kindergarten teacher than the heir to a wrestling empire. She wore her red hair cut short and boyish and had on a white floral print dress. Most notably, she also carried in her hands a plush doll of herself. Years ago, when she had been a baby, a skit on television had involved her being kicked in the head. Ever since then, whenever she spoke on television, she did so through the doll. People were fairly certain that the entire kick in the head thing had been a gimmick, but there were no recordings of her ever speaking except in the third person, via the doll. She is also said to have a deep crush on the only man waiting in the room. Alright, so that is some serious keeping of kayfabe. You gotta spend the rest of your life talking through the doll so you can keep in character because of the angle that took place where you were a baby and you were kicked in the head. For years, Paul Prototype was the man people thought of when they heard professional wrestler. Standing at 6.5 feet tall and weighing almost 280 pounds, the man known as the Supreme Package had starred in comic books and Saturday morning cartoons, and had even been appointed a UNICEF ambassador for his work with sick children. But ever since Solitary beat him for the GWA Championship, the difference between Paul the Man and Prototype the Gimmick quickly became apparent. While he continued to play the good guy in television, he virtually owned the GWA Western Heavyweight Championship. Prototype had earned a reputation as a ruthless backstage politician, and was rumored to have a genuine obsession with Solitary. "Join us, Mrs. Cunoesse," said Prototype. He smiled in what you assume was an attempt at warmth, which was somewhat undermined by the scar slashing diagonally across his face, a gift from Solitary during a ladder match. He seemed to be weighing your worth with his eyes, wondering if he was somehow lessening himself by being in the same room as a no-name worker, such as yourself. "We've got a lot to talk about." Let's see, is it a pleasure to meet him? Can he start by telling us what's going on? Or do we stay silent because Prototype is the kind of person who likes the sound of his own voice? Let's stay silent. That seems reasonable. Besides Alex Dobbs, the other woman waiting for you snickered. She was the youngest of the 3, with long, unkempt black hair and tattoos of lucha libre masks up and down both forearms. "What Paul means," said Madison Rio, "is that he's got a lot to say, and he expects you to listen." If Dobbs and Prototype represented the entrenched GWA establishment, Rio was their opposite number, the voice of the smart wrestling fans. The one who said out loud and on air what the internet wrestling community was posting. Whether she was an authentic representative of the IWC or a sellout was a matter of constant debate. Rio ran one of the most popular wrestling blogs on the internet, Spandex Savior, After winning a supposedly unwinnable trivia show on Wednesday Night Wrestling, Rio was awarded the role of color commentator on the GWA's flagship show. Some fans claim that the entire thing was a setup and that the GWA had Rio in their pockets from the start, but most seem to enjoy having a snarky alternative voice calling the in-ring action. You know, I remember back in the 90s, the internet fans were considered a small subset of wrestling fans, but, I mean, today, is there really a differentiation? I mean, everyone's on the internet. Is there actually still an IWC, or would that just be all wrestling fans? It seems strange to me that there would still be like a separation between those two concepts. I don't know. All three are major players in the wrestling world, but you're most intimidated by Alex Dobbs, Paul Prototype, or Madison Rio. Well, maybe we'll leave that to the chat. Chat, which of these three is Cunoesse intimidated by? It'll be 1 for Alex Dobbs, the woman who talks through her doll. 2, Paul Prototype, a very large man with very large muscles. 3, Madison Rio, who is the smark of the crowd, the internet fan. It looks like people are saying number 1. Seems like it's pretty dominant that number 1 is the one that's gonna win. So let's go with Alex Dobbs. Whatever her personality, for all practical purposes, she owns the GWA. Prototype raised an eyebrow at Rio's snide comment, but otherwise ignored her. Shadow, I'm sure you know by now that the three of us will be judges for the NFA finale. While we'll be watching footage and conferring with your trainers, we also wanted a chance to speak with you privately, outside the frame of the show. What followed was 20 minutes of Prototype talking about what one needs to make it in the wrestling business. Rio was right. He wasn't interested in the conversation so much as a lecture. It was a familiar spiel, one you'd heard before from Mira Kirby, from Vinny, from Mr. Awesome, except that Prototype's version placed a lot of emphasis on the brotherhood hierarchy and paying your dues. Through it all, Dobbs brushed the hair of her doll and stared at a spot just above your left shoulder. Rio, meanwhile, was rolling her eyes so often that she probably had the inside of her skull mapped out. So we don't actually have the option to show impatience. We can listen attentively, or pretend to listen. Well, it sounds like he's kind of a bore, so let's say we pretend to listen. Before you knew it, the interview was over, and you were being herded back into the SUV. When you got back to your room, however, there was a note waiting for you.
Shadow, you may think it's strange to get a note from me when we've just met face to face, but this isn't part of how the game is played. This is part of the game, and you'll have realized by now that listening skills aren't part of the Supreme package. I enjoyed your stuff in the Indies, and I think you can be a huge star in the GWA, but only if you're aware that masks aren't only for use in the ring. I could show you how to deal with the true heels of this business, but if you're worried about blowback, feel free to junk this anytime.
The letter was unsigned, but the way it was written was vintage Madison Rio. Yeah, let's take it to heart. It seems genuine.
Still with me? Good. Now, you're probably wondering what the point of our little meeting was. Aside from the fact that Prototype loves a captive audience, the meeting was your final challenge. Yes, even if all you were doing was standing there, you were still being evaluated. Get used to that. Each of us were looking for different things, but what all of us were watching was how you reacted to Prototype's monologue. You did an okay of pretending to listen. I'm pretty sure you had Prototype fooled. Not me, though. And not the attentive fan. You get a few dozen fan sites throwing up screen caps of exactly where your eyes glazed over. And even Prototype will realize you checked out. And that can be bad for you. Remember, there are those of us on the inside who want you to succeed. But there are at least as many of us who want to see you crash and burn. Watch yourself. Others are too. P.S. When the angels come, sell like hell. You folded up the unsigned letter and put it in your wallet. It's giving you a lot to think about. Now, she really got this letter to us really fast. It's a really quick turnaround time on this letter.
Why would Madison Rio help us? Were others getting notes too? What does the postscript mean? If she really wanted to help, couldn't she have spelled things out clearly? You stared at the note, as if by doing so you could get it to give up its secrets. Or Madison's. Now. You're still thinking about the note as the other finalists are announced. When Kale and Zeus have joined you in the ring, the great N says that it's time to announce the winner of the Near Fall Academy, Season 1. Paul Prototype nods and takes an envelope out of his suit pocket, stepping forward to take the microphone from Nick Varnish. He takes a spot under the gigantic GWA logo suspended above the ring. "Thanks, Nick," says Prototype. "The three of us, as well as the trainers, have been discussing this nonstop for the past 2 days, and I think we've come to a consensus. It was tough, but the person we believe is a future GWA star is..." Suddenly, there was a gasp from the crowd. All you have time to register are several shadows, suddenly blocking the light from above. Winged shadows? The people in the ring scatter as a group of men and women land on the mat, each of them wearing some sort of decorative winged harness. One of them doesn't land on the mat, but instead on Paul Prototype, knocking the big man to the ground before the other two figures converge to kick the crap out of the Western Heavyweight Champion. You recognize the intruders, members of the Plague of Angels faction, heel wrestlers whose gimmick is that they're there to bring about the signs of the apocalypse. The two of the members of the faction, the tag team partners, Angel Rafaela and Angel Cetiel, rush towards you with malice in their eyes. That's when it hits you. It's a work. I mean, I should hope so. They've turned the finals of a reality show into part of a storyline. That's brilliant. Ah, hell, I should have known. This is idiotic. It undermines the reality of the reality show. I'm going to post about that on Twitter. I mean, look, we're a wrestler. We're all about the kayfabe. It's fine. We know. What a great way to integrate the competitors into the regular show. Of course, it could also be a way of writing off the losing contestants, but even then, it's a better way to go, instead of having to take the walk of shame to the back while the winner celebrates. Suddenly you hear a voice in your earpiece. "Take the beating," it says, and you recognize the robotic voice of Forrest Dundee. The Angels are almost upon you. Sell the attacks, make them look good. Get in a few blows so we don't look weak. The hell with it, try to fight them for real. Well, fighting for real did not work the first time. Now, we did get the letter from Madison saying to sell like hell. We hear Forrest in our earpiece saying to sell. And Paul Prototype got beaten up by the Angels. Now, even if the first two things didn't happen, Paul Prototype is clearly an amalgamation of John Cena and Triple H, and if he's selling this beating without getting any offense in, it would probably be a big mistake for the rookie to try to get any offense in. So even if we had not been warned about this, probably you should just know that you should just sell the attacks. So let's go with that. The Angels pounce on you with punches and kicks, and you're crumble beneath their onslaught. Their blows are stiff, a welcoming right perhaps, but you do your best to make them seem even more powerful than they actually are, finally letting a double drop kick send you a somersaulting over the rope and onto the ground. It takes you a moment to shake off the fall, and by then the Angels have dropped down next to you. But before they can resume their attack, a blur of a figure streaks across your field of vision and tags one Angel with a stiff right cross. She goes flying into the arena barricade, and her partner soon joins you. The new arrival turns to you and your eyes widen. "Hello, Shadow," says JJ Havoc. "I was in the area, and I just thought I'd ask, would you like to become tag team champions of the Wild?" Oh no, it's JJ Havoc, our old friend / enemy / rival. / lover? I guess we will have to wait before we find out. Because we have ended a chapter, Chapter 6. We're entering Chapter 7 of Slammed by Paolo Chimiaco. Chapter 7 is Blind Tag, where JJ, I guess, has taken it on herself to offer us a place as her tag team partner. And we will see how this turns out for JJ and for Cunoesse as we enter Chapter 7. The NXT portion of Cunoesse's career is, I guess, over. And seems like that went okay for her, you know? It seems like she's making the transition into the big time okay. We'll see how it continues to go. As we, well, I mean, there's a lot worse than you could do than having one of the big stars put you in a tag team with her to go after the titles. You know, there's worse ways to start off your time in the company. We will see how this goes as we go into Chapter 7 of Slammed.